So tonight we're going to continue our journey through the homilies to the youth by Father George Calciu. And tonight we are going to discuss about the number 6, which speaks about death and resurrection. And I want to present to you before we start, because we're going to see referenced a little bit of from this homily. We're going to see the view of the atheistic person, a person that lives without God by definition, and what is the perspective of such a person for life and for death. And there's a movie that I've watched some time ago. I don't recommend it if you have a tendency towards depression. It's the most depressing movie that I've ever seen. It's called what is the name of the movie? Sunset Train, the Sunset Express, the Sunset Limited. Sorry. The premise of the movie is that there is this one guy that wants to commit suicide, and somebody saves him, and then takes him up into a room, and they have a discussion about life in general. And I want to play you a clip from that movie that is kind of gives you an idea of what a world without Christ and without resurrection can look like, where and without purpose, without a Christian purpose, without the purpose of uniting ourselves with God, where that brings you. And I'm going to share right now. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's play this.
Maybe you just need to admit that you're in over the hill. I do admit it, but that don't let me off the hook. I got no choice. Okay. Maybe you're right. Well, here's my news, Reverend. I long for the darkness. I pray for death, real death. And if I thought that in death I would be the people I knew in life, I don't know what I would do. That would be the ultimate horror, the ultimate nightmare. If I thought I was going to be my mother again and start all of that all over, only this time without the prospect of death to look forward to, that would be the final nightmare. Kafka on wheels. Yeah, you don't want to see your own, huh? No, I don't. I want the dead to be dead. Forever. And I want to be one of them. Except, of course, you can't be one of them. You can't be one of the dead, because that which has no existence can have no community. No community. My heart wants just thinking about it. Blackness, loneliness, silence, peace. And all of it only a heartbeat away. I don't regard my state of mind as some pessimistic view of the world, regarding this world as evolution cannot avoid bringing intelligent life ultimately to an awareness of one thing, and one thing above all else, and that one thing is futility. And met God, then I would change.
All right. I know that the volume was not very good. I don't know exactly why, but let me just find something here. Something to be said here. The volume is maximum. Okay, output. Well, doesn't matter. You had the captions. They were not great there. But here is the gist of it. The gist of it is that life leads to death, and there is nothing after that. Okay, and even the whole idea of community is appalling to people that do not believe in the purpose of community, in the common good. This is the idea of nihilism. You know, atheism eventually leads to nihilism, which means that is the idea that nothing really exists and nothing really matters. Everything ends in futility. This is the very definition of nihilism, and so. This is where the entire atheistic Marxist propaganda leads to this idea that nothing really matters, that we live here for a purpose, which is the purpose of living a life the best we can, do as much good as we can, be as moral as we can for the sake of others, and that's it. We draw no benefit from that. There is no God, there is no afterlife, and we actually don't want any type of afterlife. I don't want to go through the problems here again. What we're going to see from Father George is that we have a different proposition in Christianity. You know, it's a totally different thing. And the problem with, if you are ever curious to watch the movie, the problem with it is that equates Christianity with the evangelical / Protestant view of Christianity, which is in a way difficult to accept at times. Is not very much conducive to love. Is not very much conducive to a lot of excitement after you die. After you die, you're on some clouds. You made it. You made the threshold. You are in between the people that have been chosen without any virtue, and others have been damned for others, for other reasons which we don't know. And apparently, God chooses and does whatever He wants. Without our participation in anything, which is a very, very somber proposition. And so what Father George is contrasting atheism with is not with this Christian view, which is somewhat limited and to the potential of men, very limiting to the potential of men, but shows the Orthodox Christian view of it, which is you will see different. So let's go back to our screen and try to find that. Where is it? It's not this one. All right, I'm having trouble sharing now. Where did I go? Where did it go? Just give me a second. All right, this is it. All right, still not there. There we go. All right, let's do this. Let's make it bigger. Let's go to homily number 6. So about death and resurrection. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. We will talk today, friends, about death and resurrection. What a strange and contradictory pairing for your ears, which have heard only of death and life. You know nothing, my young friend, but the logical meaning of affirmation or negation. Forcibly held by the materialist straitjacket, you know that water flows to the valleys, that fire burns and clouds contain electrical current. But this information is intended to make you sleep easy, with your ears bent to obedience and your understanding restricted to what is given to you. The universal remedies offered to you like a message in a fortune cookie. This is, obviously to say that atheism is a materialistic ideology that only recognizes matter, doesn't recognize anything that is spiritual, doesn't recognize a creation or general goal for creation, but just speaks about randomness in creation, randomness into development, randomness into end. And so this is, fortune cookies are what? Are generally Chinese sayings, which are Buddhist sayings, most of them, or Zen, or any type of other Asian type of ideology, which is based on a God that is not personal. is based on an energy that is contained in everything, in which eventually we will be there. So for them, nothing really exists. So in the same way, for the materialist, is the same thing. Nothing really exists. Everything is matter. Everything is, or if it's not matter, is energy, and so forth. There. And so this whole idea keeps you locked into a reality that you can only see and access through the senses. The deans of atheist ideologies have received illumination, which has placed them in possession of absolute truth, the substitution of one glaring error for another only a little less flagrant. The only problem is that each new error is imposed on you as an absolute truth. The attempt to criticize such an ideological truth is considered a dangerous heresy. The officials of atheism begin at once to hunt the witch. So what it says here, it says that basically atheism is based on an initial error of judgment, and then if you start any type of argument, any type of idea on a basis that that is wrong, eventually everything that you say is going to be wrong, because you start with the wrong premise. And so the problem with atheism is that they start with the idea that God doesn't exist. And so from that, everything is open to their possibilities, and any other smaller ideas after this create this big ideology of atheism, but the main idea remains, and that if that foundational idea is wrong, then everything else is going to be built wrongly. The poles of our existence stretch between life and death. Every materialistic concept states, you, O man, are destined to be born and die by a caprice of nature, by the simple play of passion. You have no destiny. You follow the law of necessity and quantity, which through some miracle becomes quality, and you must accept this as the only law governing your life and death. Again, more description of the atheistic ideology. This means that you are the most unfortunate being on earth, for neither plants nor animals have any consciousness of life and death. But you do. You know that you live, and you especially know that you will die. Your whole life unfolds under the somber perspective of death. If our modern world has not increased at all the chances for life, it has multiplied infinitely the possibilities for death. Civilization and death, the tragic horsemen of the apocalypse, have been ravaging our planet for centuries. No angel of the resurrection is evident on the horizon. No archangel flashes through the heavens with his thunderous voice to the dreadful horseman, "Stop! In the name of the Lord, stop!" So if you stop a little bit here and ponder upon this, it's very clear that the fact that we are the only living being that knows that they're gonna die, it puts us in a very depressing situation, because any animal lives like they will not die. You know, they live, they cherish every moment, they gather food, they create nests, they raise their pups, you know, they have a regular life, okay? But if we are to live with knowing, but because they don't really realize that they're gonna die, they just live. We know that we are gonna die, and so knowing that we're gonna die is like a looming thing over our heads that is basically putting us in a place of extreme depression. And if it's nothing that we can do about it, and we can invest money in science and gerontology, you know, the science of not aging, we can do all kinds of things, but eventually we are all going to die. No matter how much money we spend, how much energy we spend, we are gonna die, and that's a very depressive thing, which leads us to a place of nihilism, as we were discussing earlier around that video. In the material heaven of the atheist, there are written the dismal words, "Nothing exists but life and death," and after them a striking prohibition: "It is forbidden to believe in the resurrection." So this idea of communism is not that here is what we believe, is that you have to believe that. You're not allowed to believe anything else. And we see the same type of ideology going on around us with the political correctness nowadays. If somebody dares to challenge any of the new concepts of life that we see around us, things that are not necessarily embraced by everybody, in a society that praise himself with the freedom of speech, we have to give enough place in the general discourse of any sides, any opinions, and so forth. That's a pluralistic society. When you start saying that the Christian perspective is wrong on so many things right now, then we are doing the same thing as the communists did by force. Now we do them by other measures, not necessarily by force, but by marginalizing people, mocking people, deriding people, and eventually, I don't know, we're gonna get to some force of some type of coercion, if it keeps going this way. And that's exactly what communism was saying. It's not only that you have to believe that only thing that exists is life and death, but you're not allowed to even think of something beyond that. Let's continue. Friend, what has atheism given you in exchange for dispossessing you of faith and the resurrection? What gift has it given you for taking away from you Jesus the risen one? To what serene celebration has it called you when it made you labor on Pascha and Christmas? What purification and spiritual rest has it outlined for you after the Christian celebrations were soiled with the dirt of denigration and violence verbal slogans? So during communist time, what's happening, if you worked on Christmas or you work on Pascha, you were paid more, right? And that just to make you be attracted towards things that are material and not spiritual. Nowadays, when there is a habit, a general habit to work on Sundays and feast days and Christmas and so forth, they also pay the people more, which is kind of the same idea. We're encouraging by a monetary gain people to renounce or to be tempted to renounce their beliefs and their traditional customs, and we replace them with others that we consider better, more progressive, more in tune with the times, or whatever we want to call them. At another time, men sought to live out the time of God, dimensions stretching out towards infinity. Today, with our eyes on the clock, we boringly measure time by meetings like a curse. Isn't that familiar, right? When you work for a company and you go from meeting to meeting, when you have meetings to talk about other meetings, it's crazy. At another time, we reconciled ourselves at Pascha to our fellow men with the words of the Paschal hymn, "Let us embrace one another, let us speak brothers and sisters, also to those who hate us, and in the resurrection let us forgive everything." Today, on Pascha, we are offered picnics with alcoholic orgies, which inevitably end up in violence, right? Even nowadays, we have Christmas, and what do? We meet, we have Christmas parties all the way through Lent, right? Nobody fasts anymore. I mean, what's Lent? And we move ahead with Christmas as it would be just a time for celebration. Halloween, let's celebrate again. Let's transform it from the Feast of All Saints into a feast of all devils and of all orgies. Let us Pascha, and let's make it into an Easter bunny hunt, egg hunt, and so forth. I mean, let's transform everything that is Christian now into something that has to do with material things, joy and pleasure and opulence and abundance and everything that we create as idols nowadays. Young ones, that an idea is valid not through the fact that it exists, but through its positive effects. That's a beautiful thing. So judge for yourself, my friend. Compare and appreciate, but above all, commit yourself, for you must choose between good and evil, between meekness and violence, between life and death. But now I will take you with me onto another plane. To go on this unexpected flight, you must renounce the materialistic prejudices which were planted in your mind. You must purify your heart of passions which your educators have cultivated within you since your childhood, calling them by shining and virtuous names. You must wipe out faithlessness and atheism, hatred and lack of respect for men, servility and violence, cowardice and arrogance, and thus purified you must direct yourself toward the great festival of the resurrection. What does the Holy Father among the saints, John Chrysostom, says in his homily, let us forgive everything for the resurrection, right? We have to forgive every idea, every concept that we think that we understand, because resurrection is beyond understanding. And this is the foundation of our faith. And so our foundation is based not on an idea of a person, no matter how smart that person is, but is based on the existence of a God that is an uncreated being that loves us and creates us, and he gives himself to die on the cross so we can have life in his resurrection. That's the proposition that we have, right? You must understand that the resurrection of Christ is a renewal of the universe. Through your transformation, the whole world is changed. At the Lord's Supper, when Jesus announced his approaching sufferings, these suffering words were to assume a mystical and saving value for the whole world. You must understand that suffering leads to death, but death leads to resurrection. Yet if there be no resurrection, if the only reality is death, then we are more unfortunate than stones. For in seeing things without faith, our life endures but from birth until death, which could be a day or it could be 70 years. For from the moment of your birth, you are old enough to die. What sense, then, that this short interval in the face of the eternity of death? To die like an animal means simply and purely to die, like a stone loosed from its pile, or a calf struck by the axe of the butcher in the slaughterhouse. Such a death, but nothing human, has nothing human in it. It is a nightmare, for beyond it there is no light, but only a terrible darkness. Human life appears as a tragedy because of such a death and the suffering which goes with it. Isn't that what Mr. White was saying? That was the names of the two characters, Mr. White and Mr. Black. And that's what he was saying. He was saying that he looks at death and the silence and the non-existence that comes with it with great joy. Well, it's not joy, it's maybe a relief, right? But we are not looking to death as an end. We're looking as a new beginning. A beginning when we're not going to see the people that have disturbed us in the past with the same flaws, with the same everything, because the masks are going to fall and everybody's attitude towards God will be revealed. And those who want to see God as light and have prepared for it, they will see him as light. And those who didn't prepare for it, they will see him as fire. But God will be there, will be present, right? And so the hell is going to be this attitude of rejecting God, of denying his existence, of denying his purpose into the entire creation. And that's going to be hell. It's not going to be anything compared to this life, because in the gospel says going to be a new heaven and a new earth. There will be no marriage, but all will live like angels. You leave something that is corrupted, and will you trade it for something that is incorrupted? You trade something that is unholy for something that will be holy forever. And so the perspective is not at all depressive. It's not at all static, but is a permanent, if you want, ascension towards the knowledge and the union with our God. Let's go back to Father George. Whether a believer or not, no man can escape the ultimate judgment which momentarily precedes the agony of death and which is the tribunal of our own conscience. Who among us will feel totally innocent at that judgment? Death, with its somber absence of perspective, terrifies us because our faith has weakened and because, in the general fear which rules the world, death appears no more as a liberation but as a supreme terror. For we have dehumanized death by denying the idea of God, and matter itself cannot dominate the spirit except by force. Right? So by force, it means that the laws of matter are enforced on us. We cannot escape them. We are going to die. But in God, all those laws are taken apart. They are destroyed. Christ walked on water, cured people that were blind from death and made them see, paralytic for 30-something years that started walking, and people from the dead got out of their tombs. Right? This is against nature. This is against matter. This is against the restricting laws that are forcibly moving us from life, from birth to death. The greatest and most rabid atheists of our century, who have not only made a matter of God and of atheism a new mystical way, but have also used every means of persuasion to kill the true God in you, young friend, are all themselves afraid of their own disappearance with an incurable metaphysical fear. That is why they build grandiose tombs for themselves, attaching themselves to their earthly remains with a pitiable devotion. Tragically, they try to substitute their aspiration for eternity with these stones. The drama of their idolatrous lives end in a more idolatrous death. They have lived in terror of suffering and have desired an instantaneous death, but death itself is nothing else than a useless and unbearable blind alley of suffering. They were not spared even this ultimate act of solidarity with mankind, namely death. What he's referring here is that some of the rulers of communism, and the greatest of one, Lenin, they built a huge mausoleum in Moscow in which his body is artificially embalmed and preserved with great cost, so everybody would see where everything started, with Lenin, the father of the Russian nations, the father of the revolution, the father of the new vision of the world. He's trying to set himself apart from others and create in himself a sort of a new religion, although he denies religion. But as Father says here, he cannot but accept what is common for all men, that we are all going to die, right? But the problem is how we die. The problem is how do we accept or how we deny death in our life? How do we live this life? How do we present it to ourselves and to the people that believe like us? Because death can be both frightening, or death can be just a gate to a new existence. And atheism, by denying God and by denying the resurrection, denies the good that God saw in death. Because when God gave us death, he gave it to us because our nature as humans, through the fall, the original sin, the ancestral sin, has been, death has perverted, and corruption has permeated our beings. And by allowing them to die and to decompose, only to be recomposed and resurrected at the second coming of Christ, we eliminate death and corruption from our bones, and we recompose them and we unite them now with Christ in the kingdom, which is so much more beautiful than saying that you come from non-existence and you go into non-existence. But Jesus has bestowed upon us a death without fear, a reconciliation between death and happiness. For he has brought to us the assurance that death is not the end, but a beginning, the beginning of eternal life, life through resurrection. To love someone is to say you will not die, and to believe what you say. This inarguable faith is in the fact the only fundamental truth which we feel in our genuine and profound love. I speak of all types of love. The mother caressing her child says to him, with a faith that moves mountains, you will not die. The lover who whispers to the dear one words full of passion says in effect with the same deep conviction, you will not die. What does he mean by that? Because God is love. And if we love our brothers, our wives, our mothers, our sons and daughters, our neighbor, if we love especially God, then we are love. We are one with him. When we love, we are one with God, and love never dies. That's the beautiful message of Christ and of Christianity. The love permeates all, but not love expressed as lust for pleasure. Love expressed as longing for communion with one another, and communion with God, in whom is life, in whom is love everlasting. Man's darkened history knows one moment of sunshine, which since then has been poured over humanity. I speak of the Son of Righteousness, Christ incarnate, the Son of God, who came into the world to save it. What necessity could determine the divine perfection, who knows no need to become man? Nothing save love. Only love for men, it is the only virtue which is both free and liberating. Not passionate love, but compassionate love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. No need to comment. The words of Father George are very, very clear. Thus Jesus became love incarnate, tangible love, crucified love. It was so hard for men to believe that what they saw, for perfect love stood before them in human form. They wanted to see him on the cross, pushed to the limit, which is suffering and death, to verify his authenticity, as if through fire, to see if love would preserve his identity to the end. And Jesus passed the examination to which mankind subjected him. You see, we don't believe. We want to see, we want to touch, we want to hear, we want to taste, we want to, feel. And unless we see somebody committed to the end, we don't believe them. We have in us a deep mistrust that makes a friend of ours who's been a friend all our lives. If somebody says a gossip about them, forgetting about all the good that person does and believing in that one gossip. What is that if not cancel culture? Right? Somebody cannot make mistakes. Somebody cannot be redeemed. Somebody cannot repent. Right? But Christianity is exactly that. Christianity is exactly about being able to repent, looking at the good things that are uniting us rather than the small things or even big things that are taking us apart. And Christ and God came to show us, said, hey, here is on my side. It is me. I'm resurrected. Feel the prints of the nails and the wound, on my side, and believe, and don't be an unbeliever. Christ came and did everything, death on the cross, everything. He was pushed more than any man has ever been pushed, because he wanted to show himself to us as genuine. And then so he gives us the same opportunity when we suffer and when we go around in the world and we have people persecuting us and gossiping about us and coveting and even putting us to tortures and death as they did with the martyrs there. We have the same opportunity to show to the people that we are genuine, and we can say, just as God said when he was on the cross, eros crucified, love crucified, Ignatius of Antioch said, even crucified, he said, forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they do. Right? Remember, friends, his words from the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. What greater proof of love could anyone give than this? And if you believe it, when you tell your loved one you will not die, why do you not believe in the words of Supreme Lord when he promises you eternal life? Verily, verily, I say to you, he that heareth my words and believeth on him that sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death to life. But you believe, and you know that in truth you believe, as I also know it, even if what you believe is not very clear, my young friend. Yet to those who make room in your young conscience for the practice of their violent doctrines, and to those who incarcerate your soul in the narrow form of atheism, your faith is a reality which frightens them more than anything else. You see, communism is a violent ideology because it is not able to be accepted by everybody. And because some people don't want to accept it, it has to be forced upon everyone. Communism is based on this permanent conflict between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat that has to be liberated. And the only liberation is by conflict. The only liberation is by the elimination of the other person. Illumination, even if it's into death. So we have to illuminate you even by taking you into communism prisons. We have to torture you. We have to psychologically destroy you. We have to reinvent you in this new man that is made in the face of Lenin, that lies dead in a mausoleum, not in Christ that transcended death and took us all with him into the new realm of resurrection. That is denied. That is not available. And that can only be, since it is so innate in us to believe in God, in our Creator, and have our conscience always go towards him, then the only way they can take it out of you is by violence, is by restriction, is by coercion. And that's why it is so violent. Ideas are preserved through their truth. An idea which is maintained through force and violence is deeply undermined by the falsehood within it. If materialists do not speak of death, it is because they are afraid of it, and they pass over it in silence, just as they pass over all ideas which cannot be falsified. It's very easy to put things under the rug, right? Not being able to respond to the critique. You have to put it under the rug and force people to believe, even if an idea that has been proven false. Why was March 4 passed over in silence 1 year after the earthquake in 1977? Because death obliges you to think of God, of the life you have led, and your moral responsibility. And they fear your capacity for intuiting metaphysical truth and your spiritual freedom just as much as they fear death. In March 4, 1977 was a great earthquake. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, in which a big part of Bucharest was destroyed and many people died. And so 1 year after that, nobody even was allowed to do commemorations or to do any type of remembrance that people have died. We have moved on. We rebuild, and it's good that all those old buildings fall down, because we're going to replace them with new communist buildings with progress in them and central heating that eventually ended up not working, and electricity that ended up being stopped every day for reasons of state, and thin walls that can be used for following you, and listening to your conversations and so forth there. I speak to you about death and your single possibility to be victorious. For without resurrection, both life and death became nonsense, absurd. The love of God, however, it is the guarantee of our resurrection, and the resurrection the foundation of our faith in God and Jesus Christ, His Son. It is the sublime and glorious occasion of a vital affirmation, an invitation to an amnesty of the past. As one French journalist has said, it is an invitation to a commitment in the future. So our commitment is not for now. Our commitment is for the future. But in God, there is no present and there is no future, and there's no past. The kingdom is now just as it will be in the future, because God has promised it. And so we live now in the kingdom. The present becomes for us the future. No matter how difficult would be, we are living in the future. We are living in the kingdom because it was promised by God. Let us forgive all things because of the resurrection. Any other attitude means death. He who died has also risen, and those who saw him testify to the fact that they sealed it with their own suffering and death. We cannot doubt the truth of their accounts. These are the cloud of witnesses that the Holy Apostle Paul speaks of the resurrection. There is not just one Christ. After him there were many, a cloud of them that is overshadowing all lies and reveals the truth. At the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. This is the majestic depiction of the resurrection of the Lord, the one who broke the bonds of death and brought to man to the unexpected perspective of the universal resurrection. So the reason we say, let us forgive all things for the resurrection, is because in order to believe in the resurrection, we have to forgive everything that we think we know. Every type of construct, every type of imagination that we have used to construct God is deconstructed by the resurrection. And now we'll go back to the Mount Sinai when Moses asked God, who are you? And he says, I am the one who is. And the only way we can understand how he is by participating in his life. This is when we understand truly who he is. The rest of it, including anything we imagine in Christianity, is not revealed, and is just human intellectual deduction, is false, and eventually is going to be proven wrong. From now on, young men, be not afraid of death, for Christ is risen, being the first fruits of the resurrection. From the moment you discover this truth, your life has a new meaning. It will not end because 4 sides of a coffin and remain there, which would make our lives a useless mockery. But passing through death, life issues forth to the glory of the resurrection. Go, young men, and tell this news to all. Let the light of your angelic face shine in the light of the resurrection. For today the angel in you, which I uncovered in my first address, has overcome the world in you. Tell those who until now have oppressed your divine soul, I believe in the resurrection. And you will see them coil in fear, for your faith has overcome death. They will fret and shout to you in despair. This earth is your paradise, and your instincts are your heaven. So this is why we always greet ourselves for 40 days after the resurrection. Christ is risen, truly he is risen. We all acknowledge, we all declare and acknowledge the greatest truth of our faith, that Christ is risen. We cannot be satisfied without singing it, at every service, at every prayer, at every meal, we sing glory to Christ in his resurrection. Do not stop on your path, but go on, shining and pure, giving the light of that resurrection the first of Sabbath to all. You, my friend, are the unique bearer of your deification in Jesus Christ, and with yourself you rise up the entire Romanian people to the height of his own resurrection, from death to life and from earth to heaven. See, he's addressing the youth, because the youth have not been indoctrinated, at least not as much as their parents, who have been subdued due to the weak human resistance to pain, to suffer, to hunger, to lies. And so the youth are the future, just as they are now. And that's why there is a concerted effort around to bring the youth into these new ideologies that are far away from Christianity, that deny God or put God in a kind of mythical perspective, denying his divinity, just as Arius did. But the youth can be the force that can change and bring back Christianity, just as it happened in Romania. It can happen in any place. The problem is that when you boil a frog or you boil a lobster, it doesn't know when it dies, because the temperature rises gradually and when you're dead, it's too late to do anything. So that's all I had for today.